Hey, what's up? Hope you're doing great. First off, the devs spent a serious chunk of effort on the engine itself, which is the kind of thing that doesn't always make for flashy headlines, but will absolutely change the day-to-day experience for many players. Memory handling has been improved, so the game clears unused textures after loading into a heist, which should cut down on out-of-memory crashes, especially if you like running the highest texture settings. They've also added a borderless windowed mode and included the correct D3D9 extension libraries, so folks who didn't have those installed can actually launch without errors. These are the kinds of fixes that make the game feel more stable and less fiddly, and they really smooth out the rough edges that were annoying for players with diverse setups. On the stability front, there's also a new integrated crash handler borrowed from the Raid Titles engine. When the game crashes, now you get a reporting window that shows the crash details and even points out points mods may have contributed to the problem. This one is big for mod users and modders because it makes debugging far less of a guessing game. And yes, if you prefer not to see it, you can disable the crash handler with a launch argument. The intent here is to streamline bug reporting and improve mod compatibility, which feels like a thoughtful move for a game with as active a mod scene as Payday 2. Cosmetics and inventory got attention too. Legendary weapon skins now allow limited customization that fits with the skin's unique cosmetic kit, though some exotic parts remain locked by design. There's an important note in the patch. Pre-existing legendary skins need to be reapplied before they can be modded. That kind of step is annoying in the moment. Sure, but it's worth flagging because players who keep meticulous loadouts or who flip skins on the market might be surprised if they don't reapply and then wonder why attachments aren't behaving. The update also improves skin icons and how attachments are listed, which makes inspecting safe collections and skins a bit less confusing. Gameplay sees a mix of tweaks big and small. Shield marshals got a short delay added to their invincibility effect. The change trims the window where they could survive weirdly through their shield with armor-piercing or explosive hits. And the stun shotgun now uses range fill-off with slightly smaller flash device hitboxes and shortened invulnerability to better match the animation. Perhaps the headline gameplay tweak that will get the loudest reactions is the bulldozer explosion damage multiplier being increased back up to 2 times. According to the notes, this was meant to restore the RPG's ability to one-shot most dozers again without broadly buffing other weapons. That specific change has real implications for how you approach heavy armor encounters, and it will change the calculus on when you pull out explosive options versus kiting or stealthing. Smaller but meaningful changes include making the trigger-happy skill refreshable by hitting an enemy while it's active, lowering how often civilians scream when scared, and adjusting a bunch of perk deck stack behaviors to fix desyncs and visual oddities. One of my favorite quality-of-life touches is the UI tweaks. The FOV slider now shows a numeric value, and the max FOV has been raised up to 100. And there are new FPS cap options for 165 and 240 to match modern high refresh monitors. These are subtle wins that make the game more flexible for players with ultra-wide or very high refresh setups. Small things like seeing the exact FOV number make it easier to match settings across machines or to share preferred settings with friends. Additionally, lasers and visual alpha minimums were changed so weapon mods display more predictably. Map and heist fixes are extensive and spread across a lot of the content you're probably still running. They've introduced a new zipline variant, Green Motor, that lets bags travel and players traverse together, and it's been added to a bunch of major heists like Big Bank, Reservoir Dogs, Shadow Raid, and a handful of others. There's also a long list of lighting, collision, and NPC fixes across maps. Things like skylights not giving guards line of sight in certain stealth cases, windows breaking oddly on Big Bank's lower office floors, and a number of texture or shadow issues that made some areas overly dark. These changes aren't glamorous, but they reduce the number of times a heist plays weird because of an environmental bug. For anyone who runs mods or follows the modding community closely, pay attention to the notes about Lua functions and skin GUI adjustments. The update added a Lua function for forcing editor physics bodies, which helps custom heist creation, and they've changed how skin GUI icons are obtained to better support custom weapon skin mods that were broken by the last update. The trade-off here is you might need to reapply or re-export certain assets after the update. But in exchange, modders get cleaner tools and more reliable crash information when things go sideways. That's a net positive for the ecosystem, even if it can be a tiny chore in the short term. Overall, the patch nudges the game toward a steadier but much cleaner baseline while addressing some specific gameplay balances that will change how people approach armored enemies and certain perk interactions. There's a pleasing mix of engine-level fixes, modder-friendly tooling, UI clarity, and focused gameplay adjustments, which is exactly the kind of patch that might feel underwhelming in a headline, but ends up improving hundreds of small annoyances when you play for a few hours. If you're jumping back in, expect fewer texture-related crashes, a more informative crash dialogue if something does go wrong, a couple of cosmetics cores for legendary skins, and a slightly more predictable heavy armor meta thanks to that Dozer change.